World Book Week, A Quiet Night In by Jill Murray. I want you all in bed early tonight, said Mrs. Large. It's Daddy's birthday and we're going to have a quiet night in. Can we be there too? Asked Laura. No, said Mrs. Large. It wouldn't be a quiet night with you lot charging about like a herd of elephants. But we are a herd of elephants, said Lester. Smarty pants, said Mrs. Large. Come on now, coats on. It's time for school. Here we've got Laura, Lester, and this is the little one, and then Mrs. and Mr. Large. That evening, Mrs. Large had the children bathed and in their pyjamas before they had even had their tea. They were all very cross. It's only 4:30, said Lester. It's not even dark yet. It soon will be, said Mrs. Large grimly. They are looking very grumpy, aren't they? After tea, the children sat about making place cards and decorations for the dinner table. Then they all tidied up. Then Mrs. Large tidied up again. I don't think they tidied up very well if Mrs. Large had to tidy up with them. Oh, that looks fun. I bet you lot have been doing some crafting while you've been at home. Mr. Large arrived home looking very tired. We're all going to bed, said Lester. So you can be quiet, said Laura. Without us, said Luke. Shh, says the baby. Happy birthday, said Mrs. Large. Come and see the table. Mr. Large sank heavily into the sofa. It's lovely, dear, he said. But do you think we could have our dinner on trays in front of the TV? I'm feeling a bit tired. Oh, Mr. Large has been working all day. Little one giving him a cuddle. Mrs. Large in the kitchen still helping. In the dining room, sorry. Oh, that looks nice. Of course, said Mrs. Large. It's your birthday. You can have whatever you want. We'll help, said Luke. The children ran to the kitchen and bought 2 trays. I'll set them, said Mrs. Large. We don't want everything ending up on the floor. Yeah, sometimes you really want to help, but can't do it very tidily. That's what she thinks is going to happen, isn't it? Can we have a story before we go to bed? Asked Luke. Please, said Lester. Go on, Dad, said Laura. Just one. Story, said the baby. Oh, all right, said Mr. Large. Just one then. Lester chose a book and they all cuddled up on the sofa. Oh, that looks nice. Very nice. Oh, they're all snuggled, aren't they? Mr. Large opened the book and began to read. One day, Binky Bus drove out of the big garage. Hello, he called to his friend Mickey Milkfloat. I don't like that one, said Laura. It's a boy's story. Look, said Mr. Large. If you're going to argue about it, you can all go straight to bed without any story. So they sat and listened while Mr. Large read to them. Yeah, any story is better than no story, surely. After a while, he stopped. Go on, Daddy, said Luke. What happened after he bumped into Danny Dustcart? Did they have a fight? Asked Lester. Look, said Laura. Daddy's asleep. Shh, said the baby. Oh, tired Daddy. He's fallen asleep with all of his children snuggled around him. Mrs. Large laughed. Poor Daddy, she said. Never mind, we'll let him snooze a bit longer while I take you all up to bed. Will you just finish the story, Mum? Asked Lester. We don't know what happens in the end, said Luke. Please, said Laura. Story, said the baby. Move up then, said Mrs. Large. She picked up the book and began to read. Watch where you're going, you silly dust cart, said Binky. Just then, Pip the police car came driving by. Daddy's still asleep there, isn't he? After a while, Mrs. Large stopped reading. What's that strange noise? Asked Lester. It's Mummy snoring, said Luke. Daddy's snoring too. They must be very tired, said Laura kindly. Shh, said the baby. The children crept from the sofa and fetched a blanket. They covered Mr. and Mrs. Large and tucked them in. Oh, that's nice of them, isn't it? Even though they didn't get their story, maybe they can still finish it another time. We'd better put ourselves to bed, said Lester. Come on. Shall we take the food up with us? Asked Luke. It is on trays. It's a pity to waste it, said Laura. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. Anyway, they wanted a quiet night in. Shh, said the baby. Oh. So Mummy and Daddy had their quiet night in, which was exactly what they wanted. It's nice. I think that's the children traipsing upstairs with the food. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let's have a fantastic book week.